Oh, what's up, you guys? Void here, coming back at y'all with another Commander deck tech video. This is of Rakdos, Lord of Riots. This was voted on again by my patrons. Yet another tie. Kind of getting sick and tired of seeing a lot of these ties, because then I just have to kind of take the decision out of their hand and just choose between those two. So I'll probably go back and do the other one, but for now I'll just go and do Rakdos, Lord of Riots. Because if I had to choose, this is probably the one. If you're unfamiliar, he is 4 mana, Rakdos colors for a 6/6 legendary demon. You can't cast him unless an opponent lost life this turn. He is a flampler. Creature spells you cast cost 1 less for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn. That is 1 generic, so it's not going to reduce colored mana. It's also not going to contribute towards X costs, because it's not producing mana. It's not going to reduce X, because X is technically CMC0. But basically, the theme around this deck is going to be forcing our opponents in a good setup to lose life in order to play him and then play our other spells. The cool thing about Rakdos is that since it's generic cost reduction, you can play something like Eldrazi for a lot less mana than you normally would. So obviously that's going to be a main strategy here. Play as many of the Eldrazi as you can, or just large creatures, so that way you might be able to run away with the game earlier on. But not just good Eldrazi, there's also a ton of colorless creatures like Steel Hellkite, Wormcoil Engine, and even a Blightsteel Colossus that you could throw into this kind of deck. Those are pretty decent creatures that aren't technically Eldrazi, but they're going to put their work in, and you're probably going to be able to cheat them out there for a lot less mana, which is really what I like to call it. It's basically cheating them into play anytime you have insane cost reduction to where you only have to pay maybe 3 or 4 mana for Blightsteel Colossus, or even 0 mana in some situations. That's just ridiculous. But we do need a way to get these out there, because it's not just going to be easy. We need to get Rakdos out there first, and we can only do that if we force our opponents to lose a life. So we need a really good setup, an important setup, and we need creatures that are going to ping our opponents or drain their life, whatever we can do to force them to lose a life. And we have that in creatures like Goblin Fireslinger, Shepherd of Rot, Thermo Alchemist, Lobber Crew, Nettle Drone, Plague Spitter, and even a good old Vile Smasher the Fierce. These are all ways that we can force our opponents to lose life. They're very cheap, efficient creatures, and they're going to enable your strategy, get out those Eldrazi and other large creatures even easier. But aside from that, if you're looking at creatures, we have some very devastating ones. Never really hurts to play Purphoros in a deck where you want to deal a lot of damage, force our opponents to lose a lot of life. Each time an Eldrazi is going to come out there, it's just going to make the cost reduction at that point irrelevant. You can just free cast everything that's an Eldrazi. So all you really need then is good card draw and you should be good. But Direfleet Ravager, this is a card that I really love. It's extremely underrated. Each player is going to lose a third of his or her life rounded up. That's almost a guarantee that really, no matter what the situation is, you're going to be able to get free Eldrazi out there. Heartless Sugu, pretty much the same thing, maybe not as quick, but it's going to do the same thing for our Eldrazi's. And it never really hurts to have a Neheb the Eternal out there, going to kind of provide more cost reduction in the form of just providing you mana, but it works in a very similar way. Each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn is going to add red to your mana pool at the beginning of your post-combat main phase. And one of my favorite red creatures in this format, maybe in this game altogether, Inferno Titan, is always going to be a good option for any sort of deck that can double damage or can do things based off of how much damage or life loss your opponents have to deal with. Inferno Titan is going to deal 3 damage divided. It doesn't have to be to players, it could also just ping 1/1s and stuff like that. If we take a look at our other good cards, aside from creatures, we have a bunch of them. In this type of deck where we have access to black, I think it's almost a guarantee that Exsanguinate, Torment of Hailfire are going to be in the conversation. And within these colors, especially Rakdos' Return, all of these can be considered finishers. And even though we can't reduce the total amount of mana that we put into it with Rakdos, it's still worth it late game to have a 1-card win. And if you're looking for something in enchantment form, it doesn't really hurt to play either or. Pestilence, Pyrohemia, they're both pretty good cards. You could probably get away with playing both of them. They're going to do the exact same thing, but one's going to be for red, one's going to be for black. And this could also be a way to quickly set up for your next turn, and then the game just gets out of hand. But yeah, that's pretty much the deck. Again, as always with these more condensed deck techs, the entire list is going to be linked in the description below. If you want to check it out, feel free to do so. Let me know what you think about it. You guys have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video.